I hope everyone is doing very well and keeping safe during the pandemic. My name is Faizan Ahmed, and I am the Head of Human Resources and Admin at ANCOR Thailand. And it is with great pleasure that I would invite you to the first ever ANCOR Pro Business event that we're having in Thailand. ANCOR is a staffing company which is focusing on recruitment, outsourcing, and consulting. It was established in 1990 in Moscow, Russia, and is present currently over 9 different countries with 45 locations in those particular countries. ANCOR Pro Business is an initiative that was developed by ANCOR where we conduct certain researches based on qualitative and quantitative data. We explore various topics and trends within, let's say, business, the job market, and human resources. We bring on some very prominent industry leaders to come and speak about their perspectives according to their industries and looking at the overall data. I'm very happy to say that today we have 2 very interesting and experienced guests that will be joining us today for our first ever ANCOR Pro Business event. I would first like to introduce Ms. Kringjit Kunnok, who is currently, at this point in time, the HR country lead for Accenture Thailand. Kunnok comes with us with over 20 years of experience across various different industries, such as telecom, energy, consulting, and information technology. Thank you very much, Kunnok, for being with us here today.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Faizan, and thank you, ANCOR, for inviting me in this event. So I hope that we can share some perspective to what the topic today.
It's an absolute pleasure for us to have you. The second person that we have today over here is Mr. Vishaal Sharma. Mr. Vishaal is currently the Head of Human Resources for Southeast Asia for Aditya Birla Chemicals. Vishaal comes in with a cross-continental experience of over 20 years in, again, various varied industries. So we're talking about technology, banking, pharma, mining minerals, as well as chemicals. Thank you very much, Vishaal, for taking out the time for being with us here today.
Thanks for that. It's a pleasure to be here. And I hope with my learning for so many years, I can share my perspective with all of you. Thank you for inviting me, Faizan.
No, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have the both of you here for this particular segment today. Okay, great. So now when we talk about today's topic for Pro Business, this is related to a particular research that we had sort of conducted at the tail end of 2020 regarding the education and job trends in Thailand. We surveyed over 900 of our active candidates on the database and asked various questions regarding their education choices and the corresponding careers that they chose within the future. Firstly, what I would like to do is I'd like to get into a little bit of the demographics of the sample size that we were sort of looking at. Now, this is obviously some basic information that we're showing over here. Out of the 923 respondents, all this information was collected through online surveys. It roughly took 15 minutes to complete, and it was done between the November and December timeframe of 2020. The gender split between, obviously, the respondents was 55% female and 45% male. While we did have a varied element in terms of age groups that we were looking at, overall, the major area of 84% were within the ages of 21 to 35. So people either starting out their careers or moving into mid-management positions. The education levels of the people that we saw, 78% of them were bachelor degree holders, 17% were master degrees holders, 3% had other vocational training and higher vocational certificates, and 2% were at the secondary education level. Another interesting element to see is that whether the people were employed or unemployed at the time that we conducted this particular research. 43% were definitely employed, 9% of them were entrepreneurs and working for themselves, 3% were unemployed and not actively looking for employment, while another 45% of them were currently employed and were looking for their next role in their next organization. Then we would like to look at things from an employment sphere perspective. So while we had a lot of candidates from various different industries, information technology, hospitality, and education were the highest areas where our respondents gave us these particular responses. While we definitely have a few close followed up areas such as banking and financial services, transportation and logistics. The majority of our respondents came from this particular sector. Another area to also look at is what were the particular occupations of these people and what roles were they actually doing within their industries. And again, information technology professionals were at the complete top of that list, followed by different HR role-based individuals. So HR managers, different sections of HR were also part of this. And finally, it was our sales and business development professionals that were a part of this sample size. And of course, we have definitely other areas such as administration, customer services, production, education, but the majority of the respondents that consistently went through the survey were in IT, HR management, as well as sales and business development. Now, if we can look at a little bit of a geographical split to the data. Now, majority of our respondents, coming 83%, were from central Thailand. 8% were from northeastern Thailand, 6% were from the northern part of Thailand, and 3% were from the southern part of Thailand. I think it's safe to say that even within our own candidate pools and our active clients and businesses, majority of it does belong within the central Thailand region, which is why you're seeing such a high number over here. Now, let's actually get to the actual responses and the survey itself. So we're going to start off with, of course, the education sector and the findings that we had over there. For our first primary element, we were really looking at or trying to gauge what was the primary reason for choosing a particular education by a specific individual. And as you can see by the results that are present on the screen, 49% of them clearly said, I'm clearly interested in this particular field. 24% of them said it allowed me to apply for a job that I'm interested in. So a little forward thinking in that perspective. And 21% of them thought that this is the future, so therefore they need to get this particular education. Now, interestingly enough, the interest level on a person's in the field was the top area that we were looking at nearly half the respondents wanting to get the education purely based on interest. One other point that I would really like to point out over here, that one area that you see is the area that 17% of people chose the education because they thought that the professions later on would be very well paid. And an interesting comparison that we've drawn here is that in later slides, when you see it in the job trends area, that the financial criteria of remuneration element becomes the major source for why people were choosing jobs at 62%. Of course, we will come back to that when we get to that section. But it's an interesting thing to see that the workforce today is becoming more, I would say, focused on their own personal aspirations in terms of their careers. Especially many places in Asia, you have that element of the families having some kind of an impact or societal impacts in terms of choosing certain education because they want you to go into certain careers. We definitely see that young people today are moving towards unconventional careers. They're doing things differently and they're making those choices for themselves, which is very interesting because it leads into different career choices later on. The next area that we would like to sort of look at over here is that, did you plan to work in your profession while getting educated? Now, in terms of the responses, 48% of our people said that yes, we were planning to do so. 24% of them said, no, I didn't. I got educated for myself. 19% of them said, no, I didn't, had plans to work in another profession completely. And 9% were not particularly sure about why they planned to get that education in terms of their profession. The next element of the question was whether these people actually worked in the current profession that they had been educated for. So we had a whopping 38% of people that said, yes, I have, or I currently do. 28% of them said that they had not managed to get to do it as of this point. 24% of them said, I have never worked in my profession according to education. And 10% said, I did after I had graduated, but then changed my area of activity and moved towards a different area. Now, obviously, if you look at the data over here, in fact, 38% have actually worked or are still working in this area. This is quite an interesting element between education and whether the education is followed through to become a career. And I would definitely like to open up the floor a little bit to our auspicious guests to give a little bit of their perspective over here. So Kunal, could you please maybe share some insight looking at the technology sector? Whether, how you feel about this data, and is this a trend that you see within the technology sector itself?
Well, so I think data itself is very interesting to me. So, well, I think conventional ways. So when we are choosing a job in Thailand here, it's not like we have like either we're gonna choose money or either we're gonna choose the interest. And see here, just like back to the data that you just show. I think it's now people are looking for more trend. The new talents are looking more trend in terms of just like choosing job based on the interest. However, money still are the dominant factors. So to me, the key takeaway that I look to this, I think it's part of the firm responsibilities or the way that we can retain our talent by marrying these two together. We stand, while we still can be able to pay the talent with like those kind of just like a reasonable or a good pay, they still can keep that interest in the job. That's very important for the firm to look through that. And I think this trend is very significantly seen in IT business as well. So I think the heat of the IT business in Thailand now is very, very visible. We all know around just like the high pay in that sense. However, the interest of the job are something like is motivate the IT guys in moving and changing the job as well. So looking back to just like what the firm can be prepared for our people, we need to really just like thinking about the program that we can really give them and retain them the interest, and also just like giving them just like those kind of reskill and upskilling themselves, so they can know like okay, the firm is still just like really focusing on motivating them toward the interest, toward the job, toward the career itself. I think these are really important factors that we need to marry them together.
Okay, great. Thank you so very much for your perspective. Mr. Vishaal, may I ask for your point of view as far as looking at the planning in education versus the current profession? What would you like to share on this?
Okay, so my experience in the contents I have worked before, there is hardly any correlation between the education you choose and the job you take. Okay. I have seen a country like Russia where most of them try to become MBBS doctor, and then they become salespeople in pharmaceutical organization because they don't pursue practice or they don't join government organization to practice medicine. Similarly, in India, there was a time whether you are an engineer in mechanical, metallurgy, chemical, your dream job would be an IT organization and you will start becoming a coder. Okay. And so much so that at one point of time, our industrial sector was not able to find enough mechanical engineer or metallurgical engineer because they were all going to IT sector. So my experience is that education is makes you eligible for your life in employment. Okay, then what you do becomes a factor of supply and demand of that particular sector. And how do you keep yourself updated on the new stuff which is coming? Okay. The worrisome part is, Faizan, that in 2021, the jobs which we are seeing, okay, majority of them will not exist after 5 to 6 years. Similarly, what we saw in 2014-15, half of the jobs have disappeared. They are not there. So for young people who are entering into employment sector, it is not only organization who carry this responsibility, and that's a huge responsibility to prepare them for future. It is incumbent upon the youngsters who are coming that they reskill or upskill themselves. So what we're talking today is relevant to this year or maybe next year. After that, the entire employment versus employee scenario will completely start changing for them.
No, but I think that's a very valid point. I think that when we're looking at a lot of studies related to the future of work, the new models of organizations, how organizations are really kind of re-looking to right size and put in the correct infrastructure and structure. I think we're definitely seeing an evolution of work. And I think that you're very correct, as is Kunal, that we'll see that change happening quite fast, and the revolutions of change are going to be a lot greater. Thank you very much. I think those were some very insightful points right there. Furthermore, okay, moving on to the next area. Now, this is a question that related to obviously how many people started getting their education or re-education within 2020. And while we had 41% of them that had not and did not plan to do so, we had 31% of people that they said that no, but I plan to do it in the nearest future. So there wasn't an immediate plan to get reskilled or educated. And 21% of them actually said that, yes, we have moved into different education points or getting different sorts of trainings. Now, if we look at, let's say, the area on the right side of the screen, where what kind of education these particular 21% were receiving during this time. Now, 39%, of course, of it were bachelors. So these would be people that are currently gaining their basic higher level education in order to move into the job market. So I don't want to focus a lot on that particular area, but the areas of interest that I really feel that are important over here are the remaining 61%, where you have 32% of people moving in to get their masters. So again, upgrading skills, getting a higher level of certification. You have 28% of people that are going to additional education and skill-based building short courses. So again, when we talk about reskilling, gaining in new skills for the future of what work is going to be, a decent chunk of these people definitely felt that they needed to upskill themselves in order to be ready for the future. And of course, 1% of them were getting their doctorate degrees, which is, of course, I would say the highest level of specialization in that particular area. This is, again, another interesting thing that I would like to put onto the floor and ask both of you, because reskilling, retraining, and getting additional certifications has been on the rise for now a few years. I think that the pandemic and I think a couple of other things, environmental factors that have played a key element here, have pushed the agenda forward. But let's say, Vishaal, let's say we'll start with you in this time. What kind of, let's say, level or rate of reskilling and re-education have you seen in the chemical sector or in the sectors that you're currently sort of involved in? Is it a very high rate of change? Do you have a lot of reskilling happening? If you can share your thoughts on that.
So, manufacturing sector, Faizan, per se, there is a lag, let's say, between a pure technology innovation happening or new technologies coming and the manufacturing sector, going for those technologies. So there is always a lag. However, in my experience, chemical industry per se, or many manufacturing organizations are moving towards a very high level of automation. And when you talk about the high level of automation, you are driven by 2-3 primary objectives. One, the safety of the employee. Okay, so wherever there are hazardous situations to work, you don't want your employee to go there, so you would want to automate as much as possible. Okay, so the pressure, and this pressure is healthy sometimes when employees see that if my skill sets are not equal or not in line with what is I am seeing around, okay, then employees are going for high rate of skill building or re-skill building. And this is happening across all functions of manufacturing organization. So whether it is pure production, whether it is maintenance, whether it is safety, we are seeing new technologies coming up. And as an organization, we are making people reskill, but employees themselves are reskilling or upskilling. So let's say for sensors, different kind of sensors are coming. So employees are reading, employees are reaching out to different people in their network and trying to understand. So it is happening across the sector, but the differentiation I would like to make here is that sometimes there are technologies available, okay? But at the beginning, they are prohibitively expensive to use. So by the time technology becomes a little more commoditized, okay, many organizations may not go for that technology and try and, reskill their employees. But the trend is pervasive, it's happening. Maybe some sector at a slower pace, some sector at a very faster pace. But this is happening.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Vishaal. I think that was some really great insight. Kunok, if I may open up the floor to you, and I think that your sector for sure is one of the high-speed sort of sectors when it comes to changing technology and then skill sets also changing. So please, could you provide some comments on this particular part of the slide as well?
So I think you're absolutely right, so Faizan. I think in the technology sphere, things move fast. So in the past few years, we were talking about the infrastructure, Java, front end, back end, and today we start talking about just like those kind of blockchain, DevOps, data mining, data engineer, data analytics. So all this is coming in trend, and we don't even know just like next year, maybe a new words may coming into our sphere as well. So how we can really just like relying ourselves in for the campus to build and educate our talent to fit into the industry. I think we start challenging, and this is our problem statement as well, just like whether the change and the movement in the conventional educations is going to respond to the real demand in the IT sector business. So the answer wouldn't be yes or no. I would say like we need to partnering together with the education system and education infrastructure in the countries and to build well, just like tomorrow workforce. I think more and more it's not coming as just like those kind of expertise on deep expertise skill. That's the BAU, the best thing that our talent need to have. But more on that, just like those kind of soft skill in terms of being agile enough, being able to adaptable, flexible, being able to just like communication. I think those kind of things are also something as the platform we need to build for our people as well. So talking about the degree wise, I would say like there are certain areas we're looking to the degree, but it's not the whole contribution to the success in the career. And to me, I think it's the role of the firm as well to looking through the talent, and we need to also groom our talent and build up our talent. So that's come up together with this kind of reskilling upskilling the talent. So someone who graduates from the campus may certain and holding a certain skill. But tomorrow, once the business change, once the technology change, it's a role of the firm to taking care of the persons and repersonalize the training, the development program that's really being able to support the person in growing up their career towards the journey. So the business needs to adjust ourselves, and also we need to provide a program to support our talent. Apart on that, I think more and more we need to look back to the education system in Thailand here, and we start to partnering with the numbers of the campus and university in Thailand here. We start to talking to them just like what are the real skills that we need in the country. We need to transform the organization together in the countries here. So we build the curriculum together. We send our people to be the professor and talking and building the skill for our upcoming talent who are going to graduate into the workforce market. I think that's very important as well. And personalizing training is another thing I think that we as a firm we need to do. Personalizing meaning level is not only just those kind of young generation. There's a numbers of people who are working together with us for a long time, and they are serving at a certain career level, at mid-career or at the top of the career. And once a business change, we need to look through that based on the career part, based on just level their potential in the next level. So how we can personalize them? It could be through the assignment itself, or it could be through the certificate that we are going to send them to certify and build up those skills. I think these are all in all is an integrated program that we as a firm, we need to look through that and taking care the talent development. I'll say like when we talk about the education, we cannot just say like, well, this is a job of the university or the campus to make it and build it, the talent for the country. We need to work together.
Okay, that's actually very, very interesting because I think that one of the points, Kunal, that you mentioned is obviously having that relationship between the educational sector as well as the private or public sector in terms of the organizations. And with my experience of recruitment in Thailand as well, and a few of my colleagues, of course, that work with both of your organizations, I think that there is a scarcity of talent. And I would say in technology, as well as when you talk about manufacturing in certain areas where the skill sets, unfortunately, due to the general education system, aren't at the, let's say, focal point of development. They aren't the primary things that the education institutions are pushing. And I think that the more integration there is, between core organizations as well as educational institutions, we will further bridge that gap between what is being churned out in terms of the new skills and new talents, as well as looking at the needs. So I think that both points in terms of the scarcity, the integration within institutions, I think that's extremely important. So thank you both for your comments. They were quite insightful in this particular.
Can I say something?
Sure, of course. Please do.
Can I? Okay. One revolution kind of thing is happening, which is in Thailand it's happening, but which is going unnoticed. That the skill is making your education completely redundant. Okay, and to give an example, let's say if I hire somebody. Earlier, I was think, okay, if he's from Chulalongkorn, he is the student is eligible to enter my organization. Okay, that's my precondition. But imagine a situation that I am hiring somebody from Chulalongkorn to do a programming in Python, okay, or to run some data visualization tools, and I have another boy who says that I can do the same thing, but I didn't go to Chulalongkorn. Okay, so the degree from Chulalongkorn is losing its ability, the appeal, okay, because there's so many avenues available to build your skill. Especially in technology sector, that's what is happening. The degree is not going to open the door for you. It is the skill set which is going to open the door for you.
I mean that's quite interesting, Vishaal, because even based off my own personal experience in my career, there was a particular point in time where I was up for a particular job, and it was in HR with a very prominent FMCG company, and to be very frank with you, I didn't have the best degree in terms of let's say the level of education in terms of the top one or the top two or the top three universities. In fact, I would say I was probably second tier and maybe on the top end of the second tier universities. And when I went through the interview process and I kind of obviously presented myself, I was absolutely sure that I was up against some of probably the best of those best schools. So I thought, under no circumstance would they actually take me, just looking at the basic value of what my degree was. But an interesting thing that I found over the course of my career is that I completely agree that the degrees may open doors in particular elements because they hold a certain stature or they hold a certain prestige, so to speak. But in fact, the funny thing is that I did in fact get that particular job. And because I came into a recruitment role, I had the opportunity to see who I was up against, in that particular, let's say, process. And there were people from far better universities. And I think that it was what I was able to bring to the table in terms of the skill set which got me the role, rather than the prestige of my university. So definitely, I think a point that's there. And I do agree that, that while universities definitely hold their prestige, and certain organizations, I think, that have a more conventional way of thinking may still hold those barriers that, okay, if you're not from Chulalongkorn, we won't consider you. Or if you're not from, let's say, any of the top tier schools, your consideration factor would go down. But I think that is changing because people can see that you're not hiring them for the degree, you're hiring them for the output that's going to be coming out. And it's not necessarily a direct correlation between what you study and the output you would deliver, in a real job. You see this in various management training programs, in future leader programs as well. And I'm sure both of you can also attest that, sometimes candidates have a very good ability to pass through these deep, comprehensive assessment processes, whether it's assessment centers, panel interviews, different sorts of tests. So you may have a candidate that may move through the entire process flawlessly on every element. But when they actually come to delivering on the job, you may have a management trainee that, let's say, arguably is paid much more than another, let's say, a mid-career recruit. But the output from the mid-career recruit based on experience, it doesn't match. So this is also a problem I think companies face at times within their management trainee and future leader programs, where certain restrictions cause them to lose out on talent. Because clearly they're not looking below a certain level. So very, very, very interesting points I think that we've had here. Now, this brings us sort of to the end of the education side and moving more into the job insights and the job trends that we saw over here. I would like to sort of go into the fact of now we were looking at the frequency at which people were changing their jobs, which was of their own initiative, meaning we're talking about voluntary attrition here. So people leaving, moving to different organizations or taking a career break and so on and so forth. Now, 37% of the people mentioned of this sample size that they had not changed jobs. 32% said that maybe 2 to 4 times. 23% said once, and 7% said 5 to 10 times. And 1% was, of course, more than 10. Now, of course, this is interesting because you can definitely see that you are seeing a more consistent sort of loyalty towards organizations or towards specific companies in the sample size that we saw. Or the companies were able to engage them to keep them, within their organization and retain that talent to continue to work there. So that's an interesting thing that we've seen here. Now, what were the top reasons that people gave for their last job change? The first reason was dissatisfaction on the remuneration and the options to earn more money. The second option that was provided or that was most selected was more interesting offer. The third, lack of career prospects / progression. Fourth, loss of interest for the work. And 5, personal issues. Now, obviously, I believe that definitely the reasons for the last job change can be various different factors. And this is one of the more controversial points that we will be addressing towards the tail end of the presentation as well. But I would like to point out that those factors were chosen by 66% of respondents that had changed their jobs, of course, the ones that you see above. And again, I would like to sort of see, definitely within technology as well as, let's say, manufacturing and industrial chemicals, what were, let's say, the top 2 reasons that you may have seen in terms of voluntary attrition within your industries? Kunal, if I may give you the floor here first, in terms of the top 2 reasons you have seen in technology that people were moving from one job to another.
Yeah, I always said in general. So I agree with you, just like, when we see the data itself, remuneration turned to be the top of the attrition reasons. However, if we are really sitting down, HR sitting down and talking to the existing employees, every single conversation, even though that the check mark is on the remuneration itself, but the hidden storylines is not the remunerations. It's come up with learning, it's come up with satisfaction toward job, it's come up with the work environment, it's come up with the career progressions. So all in all, but then when they spell out, remuneration would be the push factor, would be just like the factor where people decide to leave, but actually it initiated from the other factors. So to me, we need to really balance well. So people want looking through the remuneration if they are really satisfied with the current job. They are knowing like they are get paid in very ways and trading together with just like a sustainable career progression. I think people can choose that. But now I think like when it's come up to the remuneration, it's gonna be like the attraction when they start looking for the outside of opportunities. and they feel dissatisfied with the internal factor that happen. So in IT business, I say like, well, it's the same. I could see there's the same ranking here, remuneration, but the conversation itself is more around learning opportunities and career progressions. That's the hidden things like what it's come up when the on the exit conversation. And to me, I think it's really consistent together with the education part that you just mentioned. I think the new talent today, they are really looking for how they can really improve themselves, develop themselves into the new sphere. So that's the opportunity, like what the firm, if we really look into that, and we can provide that platform for our talent, the retention could be more successful rather than putting the money into the remuneration itself. And with that sense, I think like, well, it couldn't be the endless solution if we just looking through the remuneration itself.
So one question I would like to ask here, Kunok, and it's a very interesting point that you made, that it's, of course, the underlying reasons. There are always underlying reasons why people may quote money. I guess sense of dissatisfaction comes from somewhere. And there are multiple areas and points where it could potentially come from. But what is your perspective on, for example, monetization of benefits? Now, at the end of the day, people are, of course, looking for more disposable income on a general note. But at the same time, you also see that people value the benefits very greatly as well. So there's a little bit of a divide here, I would say, between, core disposable income and monetary factors, as well as the benefits, really, that people are getting. Because you'd have a certain, let's say, group of people that would be like, no, we're not interested in benefits at all. And, just give us the money. We're interested in the monetary aspect. While you have another group of people that would, of course, no one works for free, of course, but it's a scenario where benefits take a very, very, let's say, front seat in terms of some of these things. So how would you kind of say that what would be the good balance between monetizing benefits as well, or keeping them as standard benefits and kind of separating them in terms of the comp and ben strategy?
I couldn't say I couldn't say like, well, how the overall how to say like, well, the company should react to this. But in the IT factors, just like in the IT sectors, we look through this and based on the exit interview that we have, and when we see like what people moving to the new organization, they care more on the remuneration in terms of the cash payment itself, not monetized benefit, I would say. I think like what we can see the downward trend toward that kind of benefit interest. I think that really correlated to the new lifestyle of the people today. It's just like what people are more stay alone and then more being a single child, so they don't need to really take care of like those kind of huge family. So I could say that the downward trend in terms of benefit expectation to this. And when we talk about the monetary benefit, I think like the new generation, they are looking for those kind of benefit that can really reward in short term. So if we are talking around that those kind of long-term saving plan, we talk around just like those kind of pension things. This kind of benefit wouldn't be really effective in terms of retaining the new generation, as just like we're comparing to the past era, when the firm trying to design this type of benefit to retain the talent, but we can see less and less effective in that sense. The new thing come up is like those kind of, they are preferring those kind of cash benefits, just like the flexible benefit that they can receive it in cash, or something they can redeem as the award right away, rather than pension. Whereas they can know like what they can reach in after their retirement, but retirement is something they are looking for.
That's very interesting, because I think definitely the different employees or different, let's say, candidates in different life cycles or professional life cycles value things very differently. As you mentioned, the younger lot obviously have a more, live fast kind of a way to kind of do it, and would require more disposable income in order to maintain the lifestyles. While, of course, a person that's very mature into their career would be looking into pension, future savings, and all of these things. And of course, the prominence of the choice becomes very, very clear in that case. Yeah. Thank you very much, Kunok. That was a great insight.
Sorry, Faizan. And one more trend I could see from the new generations it's the benefit itself. It doesn't mean it's like the money or the monetized one. They are looking for the benefit that really taking care about themselves. For example, like those kind of well-being benefit. So whether the firm really giving them like those kind of the communities of the engagement, or just like those kind of mental health wellness. So these are the things like what the new generation are really looking for.
Okay, great.
And this, I think it's really different from the past generation. Yep.
I mean, I think that there's a definite shift. I think mental well-being and all of these areas are becoming more and more prominent today as points that are extremely important, not only for the people, but for organizations to maintain. You know, we definitely live in a pay for performance kind of world today, where the more you do, the greater you have the chance of moving ahead. But then that's always a kind of paradox when you think about work-life balance. Because A, you're trying to maintain a kind of agile, balanced kind of workplace, but at the same time, you're definitely wanting to push employees to do the most that they possibly can at any particular point. So it's a very interesting mix of I think, opinions and what people would essentially be looking for. Vishaal, I'd like to turn it over to you. In terms of your perspective within the chemicals and manufacturing industry, what were the two basic areas that you feel are the reasons that people end up changing their jobs?
Okay, so of course, when you do the sit with the resigned employee, or as Kunop said, and your study is showing, remuneration becomes the number one point, and they want to leave. But I think that's a very unbelievable reason to say that you are leaving because of salary. Okay. What we do, and I have done in my previous organization, I will not do exit interview when they're leaving. I will do it after 6 months. So when there is no fear of interpersonal relationship going bad, okay, with the current manager or supervisor. That's where you hear these stories, okay, why they left. And to tell you the truth, just to give you raw data, it is the third reinforcement of the same reason. For example, your boss treated you shoddily, okay? That was the first time you experienced, you raise the question, should I hang around here, okay? Second time it happens, you are inching towards making a decision. And the third reinforcement will convince you that, no, this is not the place to work, okay? Now, the irony is, if you are a good performer, you are at, let's say, $100 salary, you will definitely go for 120 or 130. Now, that becomes a remuneration. Reason is remuneration, because you decided to move out. So, for God's sake, tell me, if you don't want to move out, how somebody will give you 130? Okay. Now, the HR folks, they do this criminal offense. Okay. They will, first of all, not understand the causal relationship between what is the cause and what is the effect. And they will focus on just solving the remuneration problem, but problem lies somewhere else. So how many organizations, HR would go to the line managers that because of you, I have lost 3 people, 4 people. So I don't buy this reasons for leaving only remuneration. For me, this is a hogwash. Okay, because if you really get into the mind of resigned employee, provide him that safety, you will realize that the reasons are many. Remuneration is the last one, or maybe it doesn't exist in their minds, when you resign. So that's first thing for them. The second thing is, I think each organization becomes very, very ambitious when it comes to talk about attrition. They would hope for 0 attrition. Now that's very ideal, okay? Especially in technology sector where knock comes, okay? The attrition is bound to happen, and it should happen, okay? But as an organization, you need to decide what is your comfort level of attrition, 10%, 5%, okay? Because if there is no attrition, we HR folks have no jobs, frankly. So there has to be some attrition, acceptable level of attrition. In manufacturing also, whenever there is a new flurry of new projects coming, like it's in Rayon, okay? Rayon is a hub for chemical, petrochemical manufacturing, and there's a lot of activity. New projects are coming in today's time, and we are seeing suddenly there is a spike in attrition. Okay, but there were some underlying reasons, and they couldn't find a job matching their skill set or their aspirations. So the moment they got it, of course, salary will be higher, but they switched. So all of my submission here is, Faizan, that I think first we need to really take with a sack of salt the reason of attrition, that it is remuneration. No, I don't buy it. For me, reason number third and fourth, if they become number one reason, I will be very worried as an organization, because there will be something, a serious mess which is happening in my organization. I'll be very, very worried. And second, I think we need to have our own targets in terms of what kind of attrition is tolerable within our system. You can't say that we will have zero attrition. Sorry, it is not going to happen.
Of course, but I think that, and I think I mentioned this, that I think the remuneration point is always a controversial point to discuss, especially, when we look at it from the perspective of employers. Because I think that when you look at it from an employer perspective, the lens is quite different. And the factors that you're looking at are different. And of course, this is something that's come up just from respondents in terms of what they felt the reasons to which they wanted to move their particular jobs. So, like I said, this is one of the more controversial points that we have, and it's something we will be discussing at greater length in the upcoming slides as well. But thank you both. Those were some very, very insightful points that came across from the both of you. Thank you very much. So now this is some data that we're looking at, where we're talking about whether people actually did change their professions. Now, when we're talking about professions here, we're not talking specifically about employers. We're talking about the kinds of professions that they were sort of looking at. And the data basically stipulates that 38% of them did actually end up changing their professions in 2020. 23% of them said no, but planning to. So there was definitely some forward thinking there in terms of possibly changing lanes and doing something different. And 39% of them said, which is a quite decent chunk, no, but it is likely to happen. Now, the reasons, again, why they gave, which were slightly different in terms of this particular question, was A, it was not in my way, which was 60%. Meaning people basically didn't agree with the way the work was being done, and elements of either the job or the kind of role that they were doing was not something they wanted to continue with. Again, 8% of them mentioned that it was not in great demand. So again, it was a forward-thinking element, looking at that this might not be something that might be useful in the next 18 to 24 months. Therefore, I should maybe look at something that's more relevant to the current day. And 32% gave an other kind of perspective here. Now, I think that when we're looking at changing professions and we're looking at changing, functional expertise, I think it's a very, very big a question mark that a person asks themselves, because you may have been going through your entire career in a particular stream, all of the experience that you have gained, all of the certifications, trainings, and of course organizations groom people. So, the very progressive HR-related companies that are pushing the HR or people agenda very strongly, they look to groom employees, whether they're hypos or whether they're not. So the values of the organization, the way of working, all kind of encompasses together as part of that grooming process. So for certain people, it's quite difficult to break away from that structure or architecture that's been created, by the firms as well as yourself in terms of your personal aspirations. A personal example, I have had a certain, let's say, career in HR for an X period of time. Now, immediately, let's say if I wanted to move into corporate affairs or external affairs, dealing with government organizations on various different legislations and stuff like that, it may not be a choice that would be very, I would say, easy to come by and not something that I would even want to do. But again, it comes down to the point of changing lanes. We are seeing a trend in many organizations where companies, while I would say the orthodox method of having a career lane, so you're an HR person or you're a salesperson, and if you're a sales guy, you may get different experiences within trade marketing, modern trade, general trade, depending on the sector that you're in, but you're still a sales guy, essentially. Today, we're seeing the creation of business managers. So they're creating general management sort of employees at a very earlier point by changing lanes here and there and giving them different functional expertise and experiences. So Vishaal, over here, I would like to sort of ask you a little bit, in terms of your particular sector, is that kind of, let's say, job rotation or let's say rotation of functional skills something that you're seeing within manufacturing and industrial chemicals? Is that something that you're seeing at the moment?
Okay, so for that, let me just quote example of my own organization, okay? That will give you some perspective.
Sure.
So in my organization, we are constantly churning people, okay? So from sales to manufacturing, from hardcore production to sales, okay? Everywhere we are churning people as a design. And we have a clear-cut rule that you can't be in the same role for more than 3 years. Mandatorily, you have to move in Aditya Birla Group. If you don't move, either it is a personal reason, which organization takes a note of it and allows you to continue, or there's something else. So we are seeing in our group happening as a design, and that's for a long time. Okay, so right now I'm in the process of making a head from a sales to a hardcore manufacturing head kind of thing. Okay. It is happening within the manufacturing where you know and understand the process, okay? The process of manufacturing. So you are changing job from, let's say, from maintenance to safety to production. Those things are changing. But at a broader scale, where from purely a technical role, are you ready to move to PNN role? Those shifts are rather few. And my organization, we are taking bet on people, even from somebody moving from manufacturing to PNN role, because that's how the development journey has been crafted for those individuals. And for that, I'll just add here the people who are saying that they would want to change lanes, okay? I think this is a very scathing comment on the organization they belong to. In today's time, organizations have to be more patient with their employees when they talk about changing lanes. Because we have seen organizations, somebody comes from outside with X skill set, they are gung-ho about some external person coming with X skill set, while if somebody in their organization is at 0.5x, they will say, no, you are not do that. They will not allow that employee to prosper, to reskill. I think this changing lane business is something which organization needs to be more patient with their existing employees if they are trying to upskill, reskill themselves. Otherwise, these are the people who would take away everything from you. They would join an organization which is ready to take a bet on them, no matter what stage of their skill building they are.
No, that's a very interesting perspective, Vishaal, because, as I mentioned, it's very clear that you've mentioned that you're personally looking at some of these moves yourself right now. And I think that, again, the patience factor, I think, is critical because I have seen organizations do it both ways. So I've seen organizations that have had a very gradual but planned and organized way to kind of move people given certain projects, certain deliverables that they need to see, those competencies that may be required for a different position. And I have also seen some very horrible instances where the organizations, based on the candidate or the employee being a very high potential person, putting them into a role which they were not ready for. And just because there was either a scenario of not having a ready successor or not having your succession in such a way that gives them that adamant time, not only did that person completely burn out in that position and ended up, of course, leaving the organization, there was a big impact to the delivery of that particular area as well, because you've kind of raced ahead to provide someone with an opportunity that they were essentially not ready for. And I think that if we even look at a lot of the millennials we have today, very fast paced, get bored very easily. And I think that, of course, everyone would agree that it's been a little bit of a challenge for many organizations to manage these expectations. And I think that some organizations have been able to manage them a little better than others, and they've managed a gradual process. But some organizations I have also seen have completely sort of succumbed to this notion that we need to keep changing the organization to fit this kind of mindset. And I think it's a very slippery slope and a tricky place to be between how much you are looking inward in terms of what the employees, let's say, trajectory or a roadmap is within your company, and how much you're changing that to just ensure that those people stay within the organization. So I think that's a tricky thing for a lot of companies as well, in terms of managing the expectations of these younger, high potential people, and what is the rate of change they bring into their own infrastructure to be able to not only keep them, but for them to actually deliver results in the correct manner and at the correct time that they're supposed to. So that's quite interesting. It's overall quite an interesting way to look at it. Khun Nok, how would you see the same being presented within your technology sector in terms of changing functional sort of professions and functions between the technology sector?
License? Can you hear
Sorry?
me?
Yes,
Sorry,
we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So my internet is just disrupting.
No worries at all.
Okay, so I assume like, I'm not sure. I might hear. I heard the questions, just like the whole questions, because it's just like the internet, the connection disruption.
Sure. No worries at all. I'll definitely repeat it. No problem at all. So, Khun, we were basically talking about a profession being changed in terms of a functional role. So we're seeing a lot where people are either having to change that functional expertise or profession, either by their own or either through different organizational pushes that the company has in terms of developing high potentials or developing different people in different areas of functional expertise. So what I would like to understand from your side in terms of the technology sector, are these functional skill changes or role changes happening quite frequently? Is it more a scenario where people within a certain functional expertise, for example, like DevOps or certain development functions within technology, are you looking at a scenario where people are switching between some of them, or is it more consistent within the technology sector?
Yeah. So in technology sector, maybe it's a bit typical because the way like we run technologies firm, more or less is on the project base. So
Sure.
Job rotation is come into like those kind of part of the platform for our employees, just like how we gonna treat and path the employee career. Job rotation is always part of it. So I say like when we look through the technology talents, so a skill set is one thing. Then in terms of functional knowledge, we need to really just level on, and the way we are operating, our operating model is more on the project base itself. So people need to move from one to another all the time. So there would be just like a certain framework we put through into looking through the job rotation itself. So first is just like this kind of career aspiration. We look through the people, the person itself, then they would have their own career aspiration and how they want to grow themselves. So first is career aspiration. Second, skill and experience. They need to groom a certain skill that really support for their own aspiration. It couldn't say like, well, I am an HR. I dream to be an DevOps, then I could do it tomorrow. So I think skill and experience are really important for that part as well. And third is the company needs or the demand itself. And even the third part may be ranked as a third priority, but it's the most important one as well, because we need to look through the talent together, which is like, well, how the company can generate the revenue itself, how many of the position is available for the company. So the company demands or the need itself is also another anchor we need to look through. So 3 dimension we look through together when we move the people from job to another job. So that's one thing. However, I think the thing we need to really putting as a principle in terms of the job rotation is how we're going to create the cushion for people when they move. So people can feel like well, comfortable, feel secure enough to take the new challenge, because this is going to be going to help them to reach out to their own full potential for the job move. So the cushion need to just really supporting them for the movement, giving example like the performance evaluation, how we're going to measure the new joiner who just joined into the new sector, or just like what those kind of the onboarding, the support. The onboarding doesn't mean like the onboarding of the new joiner in the organization, but onboarding someone who are new into the area. So the onboarding mechanism itself and the support from the peers, from the supervisor. So this kind of thing are the integrated mechanism we need to make it runs to ensure like well, when we move the talent, we really ensure in moving them for the success. However, one thing, like, well, I think like, these are the operating model for majority of the technology company. But when we look through that, the technology talent itself, they are those kind of just like what deep expertise. And some of them are not really preferring in moving from job to another job, but they want to build themselves in terms of just like with deep expertise. So we recently just like will create a new business unit or a new organization to support this type of people who really want to grow themselves in terms of deep tech rather than just like moving them across from one to another function. So they're going to lose their own momentum. So once they want to build themselves as a subject matter expert in that area, that's another career track for them as well. And they can choose that. I think that's taking care of this kind of job rotation and moving people from one to another, an integrated view and solution that we need to look through that is very important and crucial.
No, great. One of the interesting things, Kunal, I think you mentioned was the area of the onboarding part as well. And, I've seen in many organizations, of course, onboarding is a very a simple induction process where you kind of give people information about the company, the processes, the tools, etc. And the funny thing is that it's something that's really ignored as well. While people may come up with a very standard sort of process, it's something that you may have something that's there, but the question is, how many companies really look at that? You may have a particular process you're running, but you may have an onboarding, let's say, docket or an onboarding presentation you've been running for multiple years and not really looking at creating that engagement to allow I would say productivity to come faster. Because when I would think about an onboarding program or a comprehensive onboarding program, it should allow the person to give me productivity earlier than a general person would in that process. And of course, this definitely would be extremely helpful in the areas like you mentioned, where the people don't have that let's say, organizational or industry or sector related knowledge. Because again, someone may have a very good skill set, but not having an idea of the company and the operations in a very deep way will definitely impact how productive they can be. Now, a very small example could be you could have a particular, let's say, a developer working for a telecom company. As compared to now the functional element of being a developer remains the same. But the moment you move into a different sector, your understanding of the sector itself will definitely make changes to how you deliver in that particular role or what is required to deliver in that role. So I think that it's a very interesting point that you made about the onboarding element, that I believe it's crucial. In order to, even when for general people joining in and even people that you, let's say, have coming out of the industry with functional expertise to be successful in that particular sector.
Yes. So when we talk about the onboarding, and two big words floating into my head now is just like, well, one is corrective effort. So corrective effort is very important. Another thing is, another word is personalized. So onboarding doesn't mean that when you throw a presentation deck to a new joiners and then, well, okay, let's walk through that. So collective effort and personalized. Personalized meaning like, well, what really is still missing from the new joiners, what's still missing from the new members. So we need to really understand, just like what the example you just made is a very classic example. So people always come with that, those kind of the deep skill, and we really appreciate that deep skill in that sense. But something like what maybe still missing out is the industry skill or industry knowledge. So the
Knowledge, yes.
onboarding that can personalize is giving them the industry knowledge, and collective effort is come up with like those kind of the peers should also onboard. So the bringing the person into the communities, supervisor, also another collective effort that we are really looking for. HR, so the HR partner need to really also ensure we are onboarding and really making sure like what the onboarding mechanism is really execute and run. And also like well here in our industry, we also have like those kind of we so-called the mentor or the career counseling program. So those kind of mentorship. So the mentor itself, the person need to ensure like, well, okay, there are new joiners coming in and they get this kind of just like, well, a full onboard program to ensure the person can integrate it into the new work environment, into the new challenge, into the new area. I think that are really important. So onboarding to me is not just like a PowerPoint template, a PowerPoint is like information and we throw to the new joiner and read through that.
Yes. No, of course. Thank you very much. I think those were some very important points. Now, if we move forward towards, let's say, the point of whether people had changed their job in 2020 themselves, it's quite clear over here that 46% of the people were actually planning to, and they had changed their minds. 21% of them did not at all. 17% said, yes, it was on my own decision. So this is, again, voluntary attrition. 11% said that, yes, but it was my employer's decision. So, of course, this leads to various other factors of why they were asked to leave. And 5% said that they quit their job and they're now currently unemployed. An interesting fact over here is that when we re-up, this was one of those questions, I think, looking at the various environmental challenges we had in 2020 due to the pandemic. And I think it kind of took the world by storm a little bit. And, no one was really sort of prepared. So therefore, the confidence in the job market, stability of organizations, all sort of came into question in the eyes of the candidate. And as you can see, the data kind of represents that quite well. When we looked at the same question in 2021, that number of whether our people were planning to do so changed to 84%. A very quick one here. Have you seen a larger sort of movement in changes this year in terms of job changes or attrition as compared to last year as an industry, on a whole? So Vishaal, how about you take on this one in terms of, what you may have seen in terms of the rate of change in 2021 versus 2020?
Okay, so two things here, Faizan. One is that our attrition has gone down because people prefer to stay wherever you are. Okay,
Okay.
it's heavy rains outside, so don't go out. Okay, till the time rains have stopped. Okay, and rains have really not stopped. COVID is still raging. Okay, so that was one. But we employ expatriates from many countries. Okay, and in Thailand, so we have Australians, French, British, Americans. So I see very high level of anxiety, not only in our organization, but in other organizations as well, where they would prefer to move to their home location. Okay, so they have not moved out. And in my network, I see there's a lot of chatter about moving to home country because during COVID time, they couldn't go home and there was a lot of emotional stress. So while our attrition has gone down, I would continue to look out for any signals for my expatriate team members. They are under a lot of emotional stress.
Okay. Kunak, how would you see you've seen this change in terms of, let's say, 2020, where maybe people weren't as comfortable making moves? I mean, I think Vishaal's example has been quite different to, of course, what the data is representing in terms of his particular organization. But how have you seen within the technology sector? Do you feel that more people are looking to move in 2021 as compared to last year?
Yeah, I think it's very related to the market movement. It's not around just like, well, how the firm are acting toward this, but the market movement itself. So we could see that with the post-COVID, people just like were looking through all the digitization, transformation. So digital transformation, technology adoption are something like what all the organizations are really looking forward to. And with that sense, meaning like, well, there are more hot jobs opening for the IT people, for the technology guys in the IT sector. Then that's part of it is the market movement. Another thing I think like well, people feel more comfortable and confident to the new ways of working. They are more adaptable to the new ways of just like the virtual working, the ways in just like building the relationship based on just like the totally virtual ways of work. So people feel like well, okay, moving a job is not something like it sounds scary as the early of the year to the early period of the COVID things. So I think like we can see more and more upward trend in terms of looking forward toward the job change based on the opportunity that is coming up into the market. So once the opportunity offering and opening in the market, people I think like in past year is more on wait and see, reluctant in moving or not. But now people are more confident and feel like well they can integrate well into the new culture, into the new work environment, even though that is purely virtual way of working. I think that's other factors that is happened, and my observatory consistent to what you are showing here on the chart. So more people are feel confident in changing the jobs.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Kunal. The next area we would be looking at is a current location of work. And of course, when we looked at this information back in 2020, it was a scenario where, on a general note, 80% of the respondents had a physical office or production site or a place they would go in terms of work. 14% of the people would partly work remotely. So it was a partly remote sort of structure. And of course, 6% were maybe just completely remote at that point in time. Now, what's interesting over here definitely is that I think the landscape has changed quite a bit when we have transitioned from 2020 into 2021. And I feel that a lot of organizations that conventionally never had these kind of infrastructures for remote working or agile sort of ways to work have converted completely to that. So just a very quick one on this. Vishaal, how do you feel that within the manufacturing sector, do you feel a little bit of a rise there? While I do understand that, of course, a production guy has to be in the factory to run the machine, but are there parts of the industrial manufacturing area that have kind of gone into a remote sort of structure?
Yeah, because of when people got infected, okay, to safeguard other employees, we created some arrangements where some percentage of people will work from home, even in the manufacturing side, and we started rotating them. But as long as things improved, everybody was back to office. And I think work from home, we need to distinguish between two set of organization. One, where you are providing service, which is intangible. And second, you are providing something which is very tangible, which is manufacturing organization, or let's say even hotel industry, for example. Okay? So in our side is work from home is not going to work, because there's a lot of things which you have to come to office to attend to, or you go to shop floor. So yes, but we did experiment it in terms of to safeguard every employee. We created, let's say, out of 3 shifts, we created 2 shifts. We started rotating people. We gave them compulsory work from home for some individuals. So, that way we manage. But for manufacturing organization, work from home is still
It's still a question mark. It's still a little bit of a question mark. Kunok, I
Yes.
would say probably it's the polar opposite on your side within the technology sector. Would you agree?
I think partially, I would say. So in technology sectors, I think that is more on even though that we are having some just like those kind of remote work models, but prior COVID, it's more on this kind of hybrid model. So work anywhere,
Okay.
anytime, but mainly in the office and with the client, and sometimes work from home. But I think here with that kind of just like the current work location, even though it should to be more on working from home. So we as an HR, we need to look through whether we have the policy, the guidance to support the peoples. So working from home can create so many issues around just like enterprise or like those kind of like community binding together, or just like work exhaustive or overly work over the time. So this kind of thing, we need to look through that and build some platform that can really help our people, like those kind of collaborative platform or the mental health support. So I think the mental health, we can see like increasing trend of people starting to adopt using the service of the mental health support at the moment because of the work from home, and also those kind of policy or protocol that what we are asking the people not to have the late night meeting, or not to have just like what being having the vacancy on Friday, so like those kind of happy Friday thing. So this kind of thing we need to really innovate and look through that. Even though that in the past model we are working in just like a remote working model, but today I think that the force of working from home totally 100% remote is really creating some challenge in the work model as well.
Okay, interesting. Honestly, I would have thought a little bit differently, but I think that that's a very realistic perspective on the fact that it just can't all be remote as well. It has to be a good mix of a hybrid kind of system where people are sort of working remotely and also working on site when it is required. Okay, now the next slide sort of talks about, how many employers did they have in that particular, let's say, particular site, where we saw that 88% of those working remotely or partly remotely still only had one particular employer. This goes on obviously to also see that people that were on contractual or multiple contracts with different people were only 12% of the sample size, while 88% were just singularly with one particular employer. The next thing that we'd like to link up is that whether we thought that work and self-realization should be connected. And 83% of the respondents said yes, that would be the case. 16% said not necessary, but it's cool when one could realize a sort of your own self-potential at work. And 2% said no, it's okay when you just earn money at work and engage in self-realization elsewhere. Now, I think that the data basically more or less says that the aspect for people to seek out that sense of purpose and sense of accomplishment at work has grown significantly. So we've moved away from the model where people just come in 9 to 5, do exactly what they need to do, and walk out without having any ownership of what they're doing. So over here, Kunal, do you feel that that is something, that element of self-actualization or realization is something that you see in technology at the moment?
Yeah, I could see that, and I would say like it's not only technology sector. I see like I see more just like well, more and more requirement or the upward trend in this area in our sector. I personally see that, and I think like well here, so we can see like what the new generations or the new talents are coming in, and you are absolutely right. They are not asking for only money and working on just like well 8 to 5, and then just like well it didn't shut down. So they are looking for more interest-based community engaging together. So they are asking for like those kind of community clubs. So the people who have this, who share the same interests, even at the workplace, they want to just like well, combine together, connected together. So that's one thing. And as I'm saying, like, well, they are looking for more like those kind of mental wellness. The mental wellness here in Thailand, I think now is more become more commonized recently. So people don't feel like well mental wellness is something like it's related to just like a psychology thing, but then it's about just like well how they can really feel comfortable and being happy at work. I can see that trend more and more. So apart from that, that kind of career progression, job satisfaction is still like those kind of the hygiene factors like make people feel like well this make them want to do and motivate more at work.
Okay, great. Vishal, what would you say would be your comments on this particular point of self-realization and actualization?
Yeah, people are associating themselves with the broader purpose of the organization. And also, they are coming out very clearly in terms of supporting, let's say, sustainable development goals set by UN. So climate change, they're talking about. They're talking about making our chemical products the safest products in the world. There are no side effects. So people and employees are coming out so openly. And as an organization, we are hearing those voices, taking them on board, and creating products which contribute to the SDGs set by UN. So there's a broader sense of purpose which is getting aligned for organization and for employees. I think this is but personally I'm very happy that this is happening because organizations just don't exist to make money and they exist to serve a broader purpose. While employees are coming out very openly, I think this is a real kind of activism, which we are seeing, and as an organization, we are following, and we appreciate this kind of activity.
Okay, great. Thank you. Now we sort of come to, of course, I don't think that we'll be spending a lot of time on this one because, again, I think we've discussed this in pockets over the course of the entire event. So we asked the respondents that the last time you chose a new job, what was of critical importance to you? So what was, again, mentioned at the top of the list and by a fair margin was, again, remuneration, followed by career progression, and then maintaining a healthy work-life balance. So I definitely feel that this is a scenario where, of course, from an employer perspective and a candidate perspective, there can be a few differences. And I think that the one thing that we have sort of mentioned, which both of you very aptly have mentioned time and time again, that there are always underlying factors. It's never just about the money. It's never just about the benefits that you're receiving. But arguably, one could even say that career progression, culture, even the nature of the organization and how popular the company is could be clear factors. So while, of course, this information and data is obviously from an employee perspective as compared to an employer perspective, I think it's fairly obvious that the perspectives that we all have on the event is the fact that, yes, it may be a particular factor here, but it isn't the only factor, and usually there are underlying factors that are the root cause for this to sort of come about. So I would just like to ask if there's anything that you would like to add on to this particular slide, though I do feel that we've discussed this in pockets here and again during the course of the event. So if there's anything that you would like to add, Kunal, Mr. Vishaal, in terms of this point, That would be great, but I think that we have made a substantial point previously. But if there's anything that you would like to further add to it, please feel free to do so.
I can just add one point here. I think as an organization, we need to increase the visibility for employees to see what lies ahead for their careers. Okay? Organizations need to commit more that if you stay 5 years, 10 years with us, okay, what meaningful actions organization would take to develop you. I think that visibility has to increase. There, it will increase the engagement levels. So when employee's mind is occupied about his future, the clarity of thoughts about his future, he or she would have less time to think about remuneration as a driving factor, as a a pull factor. So I think we need to increase the visibility and occupy employees' mind in terms of his career, future, well-being, so on and so forth.
Okay, great. Kunal, is there anything that you would like to add?
I think we discussed around this point for quite sometimes already. Then we look through this. I think we as an HR, we need to look through this, and all the organization as well. Our competitor today is change. So just like I say, Accenture is not competing to IBM is competing to just like Microsoft, but we are competing with another thing that is coming up into the market today is around just like self-entrepreneur being owned by the freelancers. So this kind of thing are the new trend that's coming in. And if we are talking around the remuneration, the freelancer can earn more. Being self-employed, running a business, running a company can earn more, and the new talents coming into that. But so they can earn more and more based on their own investment. However, if you look through the other factors that come up, like those kind of career progressions, the people in the team, supervisors, those kind of satisfaction to work, these are the factors they cannot find in the freelance role. They cannot find from being their own entrepreneur by themselves. So to me, I think we need to really look through this and making sure all the factors below the remunerations are really making well and being healthy enough for us to attract the talent and also retain the talent. Because if we are competing in only the dimension of remuneration, it's an endless war. We can't compete that, and we cannot throw the money into that war. It doesn't work.
Sure. Thank you very much. And I think this, as I mentioned, this was probably one of the most controversial and critical points, in terms of the research and the event where I had definitely seen some pushback that was going to be coming my way in terms of the people that we spoke to about. Now, in terms of more or less the research itself, we've been through, the majority of the data that we needed to. And I just wanted to give the two of you the opportunity to kind of just give the viewers a perspective on your key takeaways from the event today, and how you felt about seeing the research from an overall perspective. So Kunak, if I could have you kind of give a sort of all-round perspective and sort of your closing comments on what you've seen, and then Vishaal, I'll move over to you. That would be really, really great.
Sure.
Well, so it's really enlightening me in seeing the data itself. And I would say the HR and also all the companies now, we need to work based on the data, and we need to understand that the data is something that is telling the truth. So we can hear from the other people perspective. We can hear from the comments from the other the competitors in the market. But the things it cannot line that is the data. So when I look through this, I think it can help us in really looking through the company programs, how we can really integrate it, all the program together and make it more impactful to the talent. And again, to me, I think that it's the role of the company to really take care the talent of their own, to ensure we are really building and giving the futures of the talent. We are not hiring someone just for work, but we are hiring someone for working together and developing them and going them throughout the journey together throughout their life as well. So thank you for inviting me in this event.
Okay, no, thank you very, very much, Kunok. I really appreciate your comments and the insights. Vishaal, if you could kind of give us your key takeaways and your perspective on the overall, let's say, data that was shown.
So for that, I think this is one of its kind of a study which I have seen, which is very data-oriented, incisive, and gives you a lot of takeaways. So, for example, the education and the future employment. I don't think many such studies have been done where we are talking about your choice of education and choice of employment. So it's a very good study, and for me personally, I feel that it also indicates towards the need to reskill and upskill our employees based on the data which is there in your study. So overall, they're very good takeaways for me, and I think data speaks for itself. Though 900 is a good sample size to indicate towards any trend, and overall, fantastic study, Faizan, and thank you for inviting me to share my perspective. Indeed, a great learning experience for me.
No problem at all, Vishaal. It was an absolute pleasure to have you as well as Kunok, as part of this overall study. The one thing that I am conscious of that, in fact, we have completely run out of the scheduled time that we were supposed to run this session for. But I do believe that we did receive some internal sort of questions. So if we can just quickly sort of, see if any one of you would like to address them, and we can quickly sort of wrap it up. But we got a question from YouTube. And Vishaal, I believe this question is in terms of you. In terms of remote working, has there been a huge impact to productivity in the chemical sector? So this was something more specifically that was mentioned from one of our viewers on YouTube. Would you be able to give a quick sort of answer on this one?
Yeah, so productivity had gone up, work from home, okay? But it had some undesirable effect as well, because the overall physical and mental health, we need to take care when you are working from home. And also we need to understand your ecosystem at home. Are you in a position to work from home? You have the necessary infrastructure, you have a place, quiet place to work, or there are other challenges. So while the productivity has gone up, and we have provided all kinds of support to our employees, but yes, it's not going to last long for us, that's for sure.
Okay, great, fantastic. And I'm just going to put in one more question, Kunok, and this is sort of been in your technology sort of sector area. So the question from YouTube has also come through, is that how big of a focus has there been in the technology sector in terms of reskilling and or upgrading skills? So one of our users has actually asked this question, and I do believe you have answered it in the course of the event as well. But if you could just give a short sort of answer for our viewers, I would really appreciate that.
Well, so I think upskill and reskill is something we really, really focus on, and especially those technology people. So the degrees from the campus, the university never been sufficient, and even the work experience, the prior work experience is not sufficient because the technology move every single minute, I would say. So upskill and reskill is something like I would say it's not just only the firm, but the sector here would like to invest to all the talent. And I can see that from all companies in this sector level, we are really inviting the people to upskill and reskill themselves. But things here we keep, I think our things when we trying to execute this on the ground, some from time to time some barriers has happened because the talent themselves, especially the Thai talent, they are not really there enough or empowered enough to raise the hand up and saying like, okay, this is the area I want to grow for it. So another thing we need to also embed it and put that through in the mechanism in upskill and reskill where the program is also provided is to empower the people in saying what they are really aspiring for. and ensuring that these the upskill and reskill, meaning that they are going to take the new challenge, is not going to disrupt their current career path at the moment. So I think these are something and the mechanism we need to make it run and make it happen. So the talent feel comfortable enough in volunteering themselves into the upskilling program or reskilling program.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very, very much. And just to sort of put in, and of course, either Vishaal or Kunnak, either one of you could take this. This is one of the final questions we have. Now this is again, it's a generalized question, not at any particular sector, but the viewer has asked that looking at the pandemic, do you feel that most of the trainings will convert to be fully digital going forward? And is that the correct platform, in your opinion? And I'll give you guys the choice of whomever would like to take this one.
Good luck.
Okay, thank you. Well, so that's true. I would say that's true. The pandemic itself is make the world and the ways of working become more virtual world. So that's pro and con in this sense as well. At the training itself, so majorities of the training is now converted to the online training, and I would say like based on the user experience themselves, we can still see like there are some pain points that was raised up for the online trainings, and those kind of the challenge where the people can still feel based on the online training. And even though there's like those kind of baseline itself, we need to make the online training be more attractive, like those kind input more gamification, input more like those kind of interactive interaction into the training. That's the baseline that we need to improve the employee experience or the user experience by themselves. However, one more thing we need to just like putting through that, we need to ensure that the online training is really effective. So after the online training, we shall have those kind of just like the recap program together or the training champion. So in the program that we just newly established in our firm, just like we have the boot camp program for the technologies for the campus graduate. So while the people coming in, they participate in the bootcamp program. They participate in those kind of online training. But every morning we have a recap program. So the course champion will conduct some conversation, recapping, and making like those kind of just like the roundtable discussions among the trainer, the trainee together, so they can exchange the knowledge, what they learn, what are the area that they are still not really understand, what they need on the support. I think these are the things we need to add on top on the online training. So online training doesn't mean like we make it available, but we need to ensure there are the governance structure behind, there are some measurement structure behind to ensure the online training is really effective enough for the persons.
I think that's a great answer, because I think it just isn't just about the availability of the platform, it's how engaging and engrossing the training itself becomes, and therefore I guess it creates the openness for people to absorb that training even further. So definitely this kinds of brings us to the conclusion of our pro-business event for education and job trends in Thailand today. I would firstly like to really thank Kunnak and Mr. Vishaal for their attendance and taking time out of their busy schedules to come and be with us today and have these very insightful and important discussions regarding these topics. So thank you both very, very much. It was an absolute pleasure to have you here. And we definitely want to thank our viewers that also tuned in to check out the Pro Business for the first time in Thailand. I will definitely keep both of you apprised on any of the additional researches that we have to share with you in order of any insights that we discover, and hopefully have you return to the Pro Business events on different perspectives at a later point in time. So again, thank you very, very much for your time. Take care, stay safe. Goodbye and sawadee-ka.
Thank you, Kunal. Pleasure talking to you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. สวัสดีค่ะ ขอบคุณค่ะ
ขอบคุณค่ะ